Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio. My name is Bernard Alvarez, and I am the Empowerment Director for the Global Illumination Council. And I'm sharing that today because we had a really interesting night last night. Speaking of suppressed technologies, I don't know how many of you were able to watch the world premiere of that movie, Sirius, by the Disclosure Project, Stephen Greer. I know it's a very controversial topic for many reasons, as well as the fact that the gentleman himself can be very controversial. People call him reptile and working for the New World Order, but, you know, I think there's really good information that he's sharing, and it's really a culmination of a lot of his work. I personally, you know, I don't want to be his friend, but I like what he has to say. Anyway, it was really awesome. We got to see the first 10 minutes of it on the GIC last night, and I loved everything that he said. He talks about everything that we talk about. He talks about everything that many of the hosts here on Revolution Radio talk about. And I'm looking forward to being able to sit down and watch the entire film itself. We are streaming it. I think you have to pay $9.99, I believe, to watch it. You get like a 3-day pass to watch it. I'm sure it'll end up on YouTube one of these days, but you can actually go see it at thegic.org. Just click on the Sirius banner. Anyway, I want to welcome my our assistant director of the GIC, Trevor Knott, is joining us from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And my first question, Trevor, is it spring yet?
Almost. It snowed again the day before yesterday, but it's all gone.
Oh my gosh.
The weather's improving.
I've been seeing all these posts. I forgot a gentleman. I don't know if it was Minnesota or something, but they had snow today. I mean, we're now near the end of April, and even here, we were in the low 40s last night in Virginia, and I was very surprised. So there's definitely a very extended stay here with the winter this year, and who knows, this might become the new normal, the way things are going on our planet. Another one of the great topics that were mentioned last night, what's happening to the weather, what's happening to the world, and what are we doing? Yesterday was Earth Day. I hope everybody had the opportunity to either celebrate, plant a tree, or do something to help the planet. Gosh knows that the powers that be are doing everything they can to strip mine, destroy, and enterprise off of all of the natural resources. And yesterday was definitely a very good day to try to take some of that power back. And I hope everybody had the opportunity to do something with that. Anyway, without further ado, we have a guest, a very special guest who has been on our show in the past. It's been a little over a year, I believe. Joining us from the UK, I'm not sure where, but we'll find out in just a minute. But Gregory Sams has been changing the culture from the age of 19 when he and his brother Craig opened the historic Natural and Organic Seed restaurant in the 60s in London. What a great time to be around. I would have loved to have been there. Within a few years, he was running the nation's first and foremost natural and organic food enterprise, involving retailing, catering, publishing, importing, manufacturing, packaging, wholesaling. In 1982, check this out, he christened the world's original VegeBurger. opening up a new market for vegetarian food. In 1990, Gregory moved from food into fractals, opening the world's only shop dedicated to new science chaos theory, publishing and licensing fractal art worldwide. This directly led to his first book, Uncommon Sense. The State is Out of Date. I like that title. Exploring the lessons chaos theory holds for humanity. The timely upgrade to this book, retitled The Power of Freedom, is coming out soon. His second book, Son of God, explores the profound implications of what was once common knowledge across the globe. In it, he unveils the ultimate elephant in the room, asking us to confront the possibility that our sun and other stars are conscious inhabitants of a living universe. And what a great topic that we're going to get into in just a moment. Let's welcome Gregory Sams. Hello, Gregory. How are you today?
I'm great, Bernard. It's good to be back.
Well, it's great to hear your voice again. Let me just start real quick. Where are you in London right now?
I'm in northwest London enjoying the third beautiful day of spring. We've had a long, harsh winter, but spring has finally come through. Tulips, daffodils, blossoms, it's all happening out there.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. Finally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been waiting for time.
I think we all have. I think we finally had our spring about a week ago. It started, so we're very grateful ourselves. Gregory, this is your first time on our show here since we've moved to Revolution Radio, and I was wondering if you could let's start off by having you share a little bit about yourself. You have been what I like to call a counterculture icon. You've hung out with John and Yoko. You've created VegeBurgers. Tell us a little bit of your story and what you're focusing on now.
Oh, gosh, you summed it up pretty well at the beginning. Listening to my life flash before my ears. I mean, there is a bunch of other stuff too: bookshops, bakeries, cafes. But that's basically it. And it wasn't anything I ever really planned. Everything was sort of joining up the dots after I traveled through them, basically. So yeah, it was 20 odd years in natural organic foods, culminating in the VegeBurger. Yeah, you've summed it up. But my father gave me a few wonderful maxims when I was young, and one of them was keep off the beaten track. Don't avoid doing things that everybody else does, and it really rang true to me. And I just that seems such an obvious lesson in life, but it obviously isn't, because most people stick to the beaten track. So, that's why I like doing the VegeBurger, because nobody else was doing anything like that. Selling brown rice and, hundreds of other products, and nobody else was selling any of that stuff. And I just thought, well, it's nice virgin territory. Chaos theory. Nobody was doing fractal posters, cards. Nobody had a shop dedicated to this amazing new science. So that's, with following the prompts of the chaos of our lives, and listening to my dad's maxim about keeping off the beaten track has pretty much been my guiding course in life. And at the moment, as you mentioned, my last book, talking about stellar consciousness, well, nobody else is talking about that, though it was once, I guess being a priest to the sun in whatever culture you were in, because every culture recognized the sun as some sort of a divine character. That was once the top job, one of the top jobs in your culture. Now nobody's doing it.
Right. And just personally speaking, I'm so curious and I'm so fascinated about I guess for lack of a better term, the counterculture of the 60s in London. Growing up in America, I heard about, Haight-Ashbury and, all the things that happened. I was actually born during the week of the Monterey Pop Festival, so I think that might have influenced my star chart. But
For sure.
I would like to just basically ask you. I would think, I'm sure it goes with the maximum of what your dad told you. But what were those years like for you as far as developing who you are today? What were some of the day-to-day routines that you had?
I don't have day-to-day routine.
Good one.
But I was in university. I went to University of California, Berkeley, 1966. And that was, the build up to the fantastic Summer of Love in 1967. And I certainly tuned in and I turned on. But I dropped out more literally than metaphorically in that I fell out of a tree in Berkeley, broke my back.
Oh, wow.
And that landed me in a wheelchair, which I'm still in. But then I came back to England. So I was here during the Summer of Love and thinking, oh, everybody's putting flowers in their hair and going to San Francisco, and I'm back in London. But there was a really cool scene going on in London. And I ended up opening this restaurant, which my brother had initially intended to open, but he had to leave suddenly. And I ended up opening that up, and that led to a shop and to wholesaling. And that was a restaurant that John and Yoko used to come down to. We had every the London scene, if you like, coming there because it was the only eatery on that scene. So we gave away free food to people who didn't have the money to pay. And we had, pop stars and people coming down as well quite regularly. It was a very happening place. And it was just such an exciting time because everything was changing. People were starting to look inside themselves for the first time ever. The whole concept of looking inside, well, that was crazy stuff.
Right.
To most people, what you got? You look at your intestines or your lungs, what are you talking about inside? That's just guts and bones and muscle, So that was just to see all that happening and people changing, people who used to be railway workers opening massage schools and just lives being changed and the culture being changed. And people sometimes fail to recognize what a profound influence the 60s had upon our culture on all sorts of levels, from music to clothes to meditation, yoga, alternative healing, natural organic foods, and even we now know Stephen Jobs and the Apple computers.
Yeah, right, exactly. And as someone who, I would think that you were, I guess, an it guy because you were one of the owners of a shop or a restaurant that everybody wanted to go hang out. I guess you had the opportunity to speak with lots of people and learn about different philosophies or arts or theories that were going around at the time.
Well, I did dabble in most of them, whether it's transcendental meditation or even Scientology. I held the cans and was processed through that couple of sessions. And I dipped into all the different kind of philosophies that were coming through at the time, but I never grabbed any of them. I'd had a wonderful guru when I was in Berkeley for my few months of university there, and Sri Eknath Iswaran. And he taught me some very sort of fundamental lessons about meditation and non-attachment, which I carry with me and I'm grateful for to this day. But I didn't, I was so busy running a restaurant and a shop and publishing a little magazine that I didn't have a lot of time to dive into other things.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. What was the name of the magazine?
Well, I called the magazine Harmony. And it was the first ever magazine about organic living and organic eating, that type of, covering that genre. And it was a very homespun affair. I did 3 editions of it, but John Lennon did a lovely 5-frame cartoon supporting it, which is on my website.
Oh, cool.
And website's gregorysams.com. But then later on, my dad retired from a sort of top job he had, non-military in Vietnam, and but he published a little underground newspaper for GIs called Grunt Free Press. And we said, well, you've got publishing experience. We need an organ, a magazine. So he published Seed, the Journal of Organic Living, for about 6 years. That was a monthly magazine on organic living and lifestyles, which did very well. It changed a lot of people, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what was the question?
Well, I was just saying you had the opportunity to talk about so many and meet with so many people in different philosophies. And actually, the question was the name of the magazine, but I feel like I've heard some of the names that you just mentioned, and I would think and I would imagine that at that time, I'm guessing, what was this, maybe the late 60s, early 70s at this point, or
60, 68 through the mid 70s, and well, ongoing, of course, never really stopped. But
right.
The food thing, I mean, the VegeBurger I sold in 1988, and that was my exit from the food business. Yeah.
I'm very interested to know at that time. I now with all this talk about GMOs and all of this, was that ever thought about back then, or was that even around?
No, that wasn't around at all. We were really just concerned about all the poisonous shit that was being sprayed on the land and into the air and ingested by people. But the kind of chemicalization and the pharmaceuticalization, if you like, of the food industry has gone on. It's gotten much worse in some ways. I was around when the very first instant food came on the market, which was instant mashed potatoes, and it was this big revolutionary here. First thing, you don't have to mash up your own potatoes, and then you got frozen ready meals and pot noodles and all sorts of other kind of convenience things. And I think it's a bit sad because cooking is great. It's a lovely thing to do. It's good to help you understand your food. But of course, the natural organic, that side of things has escalated beyond imagination. I mean, there's just so many good products out there now where, people used to come down from Findhorn and Samueling Monastery in Scotland. They would drive all the way to London to buy stuff out of our little shop.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I thought, you've got to go into wholesale. This is a real waste of gas.
Yeah. And I'm very curious with the VegeBurger. Was it soy and grain back then?
It was sesame seeds, wheat gluten, oats, and textured soya protein.
Okay, cool.
So it was like those were the 4 primary ingredients in it, and then dried vegetables and things. But because I eat the food I sell, I worked a few months on that recipe, and I tried, at least half a dozen different varieties of dried onions, different types of soya protein, different grades of oats and sesame seeds, just to really get the perfect burger out of it.
Right. And you didn't have to worry about GMO soya protein back then either.
No, that wasn't happening at that point. But it came in soon afterwards. I launched the VegeBurger in 82, and I think first GMOs were probably 85, 86. We were hearing about them. But in the UK, so far we don't have GMO foods on sale because they have to be labeled. And because they have to be labeled as such, no supermarkets or food manufacturers want to put that on their label. They do allow feeding GMOs to farm animals, not if they're organic meat, of course. Mm-hmm. But other than that, so that's the kind of a thin end of the wedge. And of course, Monsanto and its buddies are pushing hard to get GMOs into Europe, and let's hope they fail.
Yeah. And I hope that the U.S. Takes over Europe's paradigm. I would love to see them start doing what Europe has done. But let's see if Monsanto wins their way in, unfortunately. I'm sorry, go ahead, Gregory.
No, I was just going to say, very good sign in America that Whole Foods and Trader Joe's are both, leaning towards a GMO labeling policy. And, if they require labeling of GMOs, that's going to be quite effective because a lot of companies will just put the GMOs out of their products so they can sell to those two outlets.
Yes, absolutely.
It's easy to do. I mean, there's no big advantages to GMO. They're just covered, but other than to Monsanto and the people who produce.
Yeah, the ones who make the money off of it, of course.
Yeah.
But now for the farmer, it's basically the same, from what I understand.
Yeah, they're not really getting big deliveries and big yields in terms of higher yields per acre or lower costs because pests are developing resistance to GMOs now. It's a scam.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like them patenting, putting a patent on, they put one little gene in a piece of food and then they get to own the whole seed of that crop, like corn or something like that. And it's like, corn has been around for thousands of years, and just because now you put a gene in it, you can own the entire, seed family of that.
That's pretty bad. And what is bad beyond comprehension is that they can sue farmers. If some of their GM soybeans, pollen drifts into an organic or a non-GMO farmer's field, pollen blows in on the wind, has sex with the soybeans that farmer's growing, and then you get GMO varieties coming up in his field next year. Monsanto can sue him, and they do. And it should be the other way around. You should sue them for letting their pollen come into your field, but they sue you, and because they've got millions of dollars to spend on lawyers, the few farmers who've tried to fight them lose because eventually they've sold their house, they've sold their car, they've got nothing left. It's really a sad situation.
It truly, truly is. We hear stories from around the world where farmers just lose everything, and then for those here that don't want to comply with using GMOs, we see them getting shut down for not complying to codes or whatnot in the laws for them to cultivate.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that the next generation looks back on GMOs as a stupid mistake and that we've gotten away from that by now. I don't know. I live in hope.
Yes, well, we have to live in hope.
A lot of people are aware. A lot of people are angry about it, but they're also angry about corporations kind of taking over the government as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's a whole another hour of topic discussion for us.
That's my first book.
Oh, that is. That's right. That's right. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, actually. What is The State is Out of Date, and I love that title. Absolutely. When did you write that book?
1998, I completed it.
Oh, okay. Very good.
So it was. I don't think it was ahead of its time then, but the people are much more open to it now. There's a lot less faith in the ability of governments to eventually, take enough money out of our pockets to fix everything. Because the real problem is that so much money has been taken out of our pockets that everything's going wrong. More than half of our wealth is siphoned off into the state. Mm-hmm. Some of it comes back in road building and things that might otherwise be done, but it's all been kind of twisted and tainted by going through that system. And if that money was still in our pockets, I warrant there would be one heck of a lot less unemployment, homelessness, hunger, etc. on this planet.
Absolutely. Now, during that time, let's see, the late 90s, those were was that the Clinton years?
Oh, gosh. Politicians come and go.
I know.
I don't really keep a lot of track.
I'm just trying to remember, because I think I remember saying maybe, before I had my political awakening, I was like, oh, well, the Clinton years weren't that bad. But it's nice to see, to see dissension coming out during that era. But then again, you were in the UK, correct?
I was, but, Gandhi was a great leader in India. But, human beings die. And when they die, the usual sort of person comes in. Clinton, I believe, balanced the budget in America. There wasn't a huge deficit. But, he also did other things which, you could perhaps rate as criminal behavior. But the only thing that really got him in trouble was having sex with an intern in his office.
Exactly.
It's a crazy situation where people, that George Bush can declare an illegal war in Iraq. 100,000 plus people die as a result of it, and nobody bats an eyelid. Mm-hmm. But had he been caught with his dick in somebody's mouth, shock, horror, impeach. We can't have this criminal, running our country. It's crazy.
It is crazy, and and for me, I'm no longer affiliated with any particular party, even though I probably lean libertarian. But as a devout Democrat, I remember never wanting to look at the crimes of Clinton because things were so wonderful during those years. I probably made the most money I ever made in my life during his years. And, looking back at the history, like, let's say, NAFTA and these other things that he pushed through, as well as what was the war back then? Bosnia, I guess, was the situation back then. And all the crimes that happened. And people are we look back, I would say maybe in denial sometimes. But again, like you said, if it was George Bush who pushed NAFTA through, everybody probably would have screamed and hollered. At least the left would have screamed and hollered,
I know. Well, I always fall back. There's a great little comment from Leo Tolstoy made, and people are always trying to get me, what do you think about Obama versus Bush, or this guy against that guy? And it's in Tolstoy's words, don't ask me to compare dog shit with cat shit. I don't like the smell of either.
Right, exactly. It really is. It's I rant about it quite often that there is no difference, unfortunately. To paraphrase from the movie last night, Steve Greer, I just posted this recently, said something to the effect that here we are thinking that senators and presidents can change things when they're merely placeholders for the corporations.
Right.
It's true. I mean, who runs the government? Not us.
Somebody always will. That's a point I make. People do get really upset about corporations running the government, but in Switzerland, when the church was running the government in the 8th century, it was illegal to sing or dance or play music. And whether it's the church running the government, whether it's the military, whether it's an oligarch.
It's always something. We have a commercial coming up, and we'll be back in just a minute after the station identification.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And we are back talking with Gregory Sams, having a very lively conversation. We left off talking about, politics in general. His first book is called "The State is Out of Date." Again, I just love that title. That would have been a perfect to be re-released during the Occupy movement or something. I'd like to actually. We didn't have a chance to talk about your fractal years. And as someone who was just introduced to fractals in the early thousands, it sounds weird to say that, when did this start to become popular, Gregory?
Well, chaos theory came into being in the very late 70s with a few interesting experiments going on. That recognized these patterns taking place, whether it was with a dripping tap or Edward Lorenz's simulated weather system, which came up with the butterfly, recognized the butterfly effect, that phenomena, which I think everybody's familiar with now.
Yeah.
And then I found out about it in 1990. And I read James Gleick's book, Chaos. And I just completely blew my mind, really. I just thought, because I was applying it to things I had learned previously about society and how people work and how dangerous coercion is as a managing mechanism. And suddenly I found out that through chaos theory, that everything else in the universe organizes itself from the bottom up, not the top down, saying you do this or I'm going to damage you, which is how governments work. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, this is a really important message for people that, we organize much better than the state organizes us. And I realized that scientists were never going to go into that territory because it's social science. It's real scientists don't look at that. And I thought, well, heck, somebody's got to look at this. And I thought, well, I want to get this out of the holes of academia and into the public mind, which was a motivator in opening my shop, Strange Attractions, devoted to chaos theory. And literally, hundreds of thousands of posters and cards and T-shirts arose out of that. I started licensing images to other publishers and to libraries. So fractals came up in magazines around the world and illustrations and articles on it. So that was really I love the fractal images as an old hippie, all the swirling spirals and paisley patterns and stuff. But it was really the message that grabbed me. And that was, again, that led to writing my book, because even though one of the great maxims my father told me, one picture is worth 1,000 words, in the case of fractals, that wasn't the case. A fractal postcard did not tell the story that I wanted to tell. So that directly led, A, to my first book, and B, to me getting back into, discovering the 90s, which were happening at that point with, great all-night, sometimes all-weekend parties going on in London and the countryside, because some of the main people organizing these parties were coming into my shop and looking at my posters and saying, wow, I saw that on DMT last night.
Right.
And I kind of got interested, and I started to go to some of these parties, and it was like the 60s all over again, but standing on their feet instead of on their head. And it was I felt like somebody who's been lucky enough to see Halley's Comet twice in a lifetime. I was there for the 60s and I was there for the 90s. So the shop brought me into that, but it did lead to my first book, and it was titled Uncommon Sense, The State is Out of Date, as a reference to Thomas Paine's book, Common Sense. Now, I don't know if many Americans even are that familiar with Thomas Paine, but certainly outside of America, people aren't. He's the one who changed a tax revolt, people complaining about the price of tea, into a we don't need the king revolt, and a revolution. Yeah. This is appropriate on Revolution Radio. And he pointed out that we don't need the king. We can do this ourselves. Unfortunately, the American state government has grown into a monster that he and the other founding fathers would be horrified with.
Oh, yeah.
The Constitution has been ripped to shreds, as we know, because they saw the possibility of this happening, tried to forestall it, but the coercive powers overcame them. But I've changed the title now from Uncommon Sense to The Power of Freedom, because that's really what it's about. People in a free state, conditioned, do amazing things. And it's one of my favorite examples is the Wright brothers. They were a couple of bicycle mechanics who built a heavier-than-air machine. They didn't plan the international airline industry out of that. That arose from the chaos of humanity. And, when you look at the rainforest, I always mention the rainforest because there's nobody deciding where the river is going to run, which trees are going to grow where, which frogs are going to be where. But they work it out, and they work it out in a really harmonious, stable manner where you've got this wonderful operating system, the rainforest, which is built up from thousands of different types of components responding to each other. And humans are good at that too. We everybody in New York City gets fed every day what they want according to how much money they've got, with nobody centrally planning it. You could call that a miracle.
Yeah.
But now we know chaos theory, that sort of stuff happens. But we've got at the other side of that the coercive state, deciding how things should be. And even when they decide how things should be like we want them to be, they say, okay, we're going to make everybody recycle. We're going to ban non-organic foods. They still end up with a mess. Mm-hmm. Because when you force a system, when you tell people do this or I'm going to damage you, you don't get the results you're looking for, however enlightened your plans might be. And that's the real message of the book, is that doesn't work. And also, how well we do work when we're left to our own devices. And there are lots of examples. There were medieval cities. Florence was a particular example where the city was its own entity, and you didn't have dukes, princes, kings, lords running it. Mm-hmm. You had it run from the bottom up by communes, which were arranged by the street, by the block, by the section. Businesses had guilds, so you had to belong to a builder's guild or a jeweler's guild, and you had to meet certain standards to be in that guild. And you could go out and build a house without belonging to the architect's guild, but, heaven help anybody who employed you. Mm-hmm. People were smart enough to know, well, I want to have somebody good, designing the house, or they might use their brother-in-law who's good but not part of the guild, but it was up to us to do that without having standards mandated from on high. And then there's just so much of that now. And every time something goes wrong, people think, oh, we need more regulation, more laws, more fine-tuning. And of course, that's more money, more corruption. It's we really need to let go of that reliance on the state, because the coercive state is the biggest fly in the ointment, the biggest problem we've got. So we don't want to give them more power. We want to give them less power.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The what comes to mind when you're talking about this as well is we look at someone who grew up in South Florida, myself. What happens after a hurricane and there's no electric, all the grocery stores are closed. Law enforcement is basically protecting all the businesses, But in the neighborhoods, you see pockets of people feeding each other, helping to put roofs back up, fixing cars. Nobody's telling them to do this. It's just an automatic it's in their human nature to be helpful. And I think when I think of chaos theory, and I think about the reaction to disasters, that it may bring out some, looters or ugliness, but it seems to bring out the best in people as well.
Absolutely. And I was really heartened when I found out that Occupy were in the front line after the Sandy hurricane hit.
Yeah.
They were out there really organizing to get some experience at it and getting things moving again. And even after, the highly laud America's shock and awe, bombing the shit out of Baghdad. Sorry, am I allowed to use those words in America?
I think we're just not supposed to say the F word.
I'm not? Okay. Bombing the heck out of Baghdad. I mean, they actually targeted communications, transport, food, sewage. They're just knocking out every basic infrastructure they could.
Yeah.
And apparently within a few days, Baghdad was running, not back to full normal, but everything was running again, because people are good at this. They help each other. They work with each other. It's what we do. And that sort of, even though that instinct has been really ironed out by generations of people thinking, oh, let's let the government do it. They do the better job. When they're out of the picture, those instincts come right back and we start helping each other. And despite all the movies which just paint this bleakest picture of, post-Armageddon, everybody's out shooting everybody else. And, it may be like that some places, but we may be in for a real big surprise and find people working together.
Absolutely. I often get into debates about, what happens if, the state collapses? What happens when, we lose this or if we lose that? And I'm like, I think we're going to be even better. And there are people they really want to cling into what I call the old paradigm way of thinking. And if anything, what we're talking about here is actually the older paradigm of thinking.
Yeah.
The ancient, the true way of understanding human nature and what good there is in human nature versus selling what's so bad about it. And I wasn't going to talk about this on any of my shows, but I have to because we're talking about something similar. We're on a government-controlled topic, so I would just like to maybe hear a few words on what is your observation, or what is the observation in the UK right now with this mess that we've had here in the United States over the last week with this, whether you want to call it a false flag, whether you want to call it a terror attack, whether you want to call it a police state drill, this mess in Boston. What has been your gut feelings, and perhaps what are we going to expect from the government now?
I was kind of a surprised, well, not surprised, I guess, but, looking at the unbelievable level of coverage that it has, the response of having, if you like, this demonstration of police power, so many drones out in uniforms and flak jackets combing the streets of Boston. I'm glad they got the guy, if assuming those are the guys. But you think this happens much, much worse every day in the Middle East because of American involvement, because America went into Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, there's this huge backlash of Al-Qaeda and, sectarian violence, bombs going off. And we just sort of look on that. It's like way down, I don't know what place it gets, if it even gets on the news in America. It gets some coverage over here after, finding out that Prince Charles has discovered or had a wart removed from his finger. You'll find out a bomb went off in Baghdad and 20 people were killed. And yet when it happens on home turf, it's the same mothers, fathers, children, athletes getting blown up. We're all people. And why is this focus? Because it happened in America, it's so different, and it's first thing that's in the news all over the world. I wonder if they gave it much coverage on Iraqi TV or not. So yeah, I'm not sure. And then they kind of cover it up. I mean, do you get much more on the Waco blast in America, or has that sort of been swept under the carpet now?
I think that's kind of been overshadowed, even though there's little things being leaked out, but it's kind of been pushed under the carpet. One of the facts that did come out recently was that the plant had actually been in a lawsuit with Monsanto. So there's that little aha moment of they were suing Monsanto and they exploded. How convenient.
And also the location, and it was 2 days.
And it was Waco, and I believe it was close
2 days from the anniversary.
Yeah, from the anniversary of Waco and the Oklahoma bombing.
Oh, really? So I mean, if it was American so-called patriots, they probably would want to hush that up.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's such a crazy situation. Trying to find logic in it, you'd have to be a madman to really figure it all out.
But you made a very good point of how the media handles it, and it's kind of like they pick and choose what to sell. And I'm sure you've seen it probably your entire life, how the media coerces us to behave a certain way.
Yeah, and it's this installation of fear. There's the more fear that we have, the more we feel that we need a coercive state to protect us. And if the fear levels drop, people start to wonder, well, why is our privacy being invaded? Why are we being so controlled? Why do we need so many men in uniform? So, whether it's a false flag job or whether it's a real job, it's something, the state really thrives on. They love fear, they love problems because it gives them a reason to exist.
Yeah, it seems to be. And I can't help but wonder, Gregory, as far as the timing of your has the book been released yet? The Power of Freedom has been released?
It's coming out in about 3 months' time. I've just signed the deal with my publishers, Red Wheel Weiser, and it's going to come out as an ebook first of all, within 3 months of the end of this month, and then the paper edition will come out next year. The ebook will be priced at a low price. It'll be under $3, which so that it's much more widely accessible.
Yeah,
and I've really enjoyed upgrading the book. It's just been such a delight to revisit the pages and to bring them up to date in many instances, because the world has changed a lot since '98. We didn't have the internet for all practical purposes then. And that just gives us a level of connectivity as the human species that we've never had before. So it makes the possibility of self-governing our culture so much more attainable than it was 20 years ago. It's people say, oh, well, when it was small communities and small towns, people could look after themselves, but now we've got big cities, you need central organization. Well, certainly that argument falls apart when you look at what the internet can do, whether it's creating currencies like bitcoins or lets, or whether it's this, I know PayPal's got some mud on its face, but it's nevertheless a really interesting, that and eBay, very interesting emanations out of the culture. It's forms of self-government. eBay, you self-correct the traders by making comments on them. And I was once I think I was screwed by somebody on eBay, and eBay refunded me. Great.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing the interactivity that seems to be going on now. And another great example of the internet was and again I'm going to fall back on the premiere last night, Sirius. It was all created by the people, funded by the people, distributed by the people. Everything was done through the internet. They didn't have to go the Hollywood route and go with big studios and producers. It was created, with Kickstart and all these other, crowdsourcing. Just like you said, we can do it ourselves now. We're showing that we can do it ourselves with this particular freedom. Do you happen to touch on the way the government might be infringing on removing this internet freedom?
I'm very aware of the efforts they've been doing for some. They've been trying for some time to suppress this, and I can see why the state is frightened of the freedom that's expressed there. I really hope that they are not successful, and I know the Electronic Freedom Frontier. I've met both of the principals on that, and that's really, they have been fighting it, and many other people have been fighting to keep the internet free. So, but I believe both the American government and the British government now have the ability to track where we go on search engines and to look at our emails, which is appalling. I grew up in a world where you needed a judge signing a piece of paper before and good reason, before the police or anybody could open a letter sent to you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just gone so far beyond that, and it's in England, as you might know, we're covered in CCTV cameras. You go to central London and you've been filmed about 50 times. And I think George Orwell, the only thing he got wrong was he had the cameras inside our houses instead of outside them in 1984, in his book 1984. But now they're inside our houses by virtue of just following our emails and browsing history. That's as intimate as you can get.
I had read an article a couple of years ago, and I'd clarify this myth if it is a myth. I understand that some of those CC cameras in England literally have microphones as well, where they can, or speakers where they yell at you.
They've had that in a few places.
Okay.
Like they were putting that in car parks where young people, or hoodlums we used to call them, were gathering and being menacing in a car park or making lots of noise in a shopping mall, that sort of thing. In some places they stop people from dropping litter. I don't think it's really caught on in a big way. I've never had one shout at me, but maybe I haven't behaved irregularly enough. But I did read at the same time that they were having problems like that in Australia, and they just, when they spotted it, they played Barry Manilow music through the loudspeakers, and all the young kids dispersed rapidly.
Oh my goodness. It's funny, but it's also very scary. That it's very Orwellian. It is very Orwellian.
It is. I used to think with the first Apple computers, I thought this is really giving power to the people. And my couple experiences I had with the police, they were just so archaic. The time I was fingerprinted, it was 30 different operations that they went through to fingerprint me.
Right.
Rolling this and rub your finger, push your finger down, next thing,
right.
all this stuff. And God, technology, they could just scan it digitally. It would why don't? But they are catching up, and it's kind of scary that they're catching up as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Face recognition and all of that.
They, I'm not sure if this is a topic in the UK right now, but this Thursday, our Congress is voting on the CISPA Act. And that will be the so-called Patriot Act of the Internet that will remove all of our privacy. And it will be complete warrantless searches. And it just goes on and on. It's really crazy. But it's day after tomorrow. They're voting on it here in the U.S.
And you wonder what percentage of them have even read what they're voting on, or whether they're just following instructions.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of these acts are hundreds of pages. Who's going to read them? Oh, that's so discouraging.
Unfortunately, it is. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. They tried to pass it a few years ago. They didn't have the opportunity. It did not pass. So I have my fingers crossed. Unfortunately, it did pass through the House of Representatives. Now it's moving over to the Senate, and we'll see what happens with that. You guys have something, is it ACTA? Is that the one that was the situation there with the European Union?
Which one is that?
ACTA, I believe it was called ACTA, ACTA. I'm not sure if that was the U.S. or European Union. Or SEPA. There's so many acronyms. But anyway, I know there was something similar. We're going to go to break in just a moment. And when we return again, we have so much more to talk about with Gregory Sams. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are speaking with Gregory Sams today. We've been having some wonderful discussion on everything from organic foods, VegeBurger, GMOs, politics, the state, chaos theory. And now we're going to move the conversation a little bit more into some of our metaphysical consciousness stuff that we all love to talk about here on the show. Welcome back, Gregory.
Hi, I'm pleased to hear that. Let's get a bit more spiritual.
Yes, absolutely. I've been a fan of this topic actually for a very long time. The sun. And your new book is called The Son of God, and it is in reference to how humanity really worshipped the sun for a while, and that it is probably a conscious entity. Can you expand a little bit on that and on the book?
Yeah, man worshipped it for more than a little while. It was the default mode. wherever you went in the world, from Japan to Central America to Northern Europe, the Celts, or everybody recognized the sun as some sort of a living entity, but they also lived in a world where they didn't see human beings as the only intelligent life form in the whole universe. People saw life as a shared phenomena between us and the animals and the trees and even rivers and weather systems and mountain ranges. They saw consciousness as all pervasive. And one thing changed that alone, and that was when the Catholic Church became the official religion of the Roman Empire. And those early fanatical Christians went out and started burning anybody or anything that held otherwise, or even that wasn't Christian words. So the entire Library of Alexandria was destroyed. The sort of 13 mystery schools were sought out and destroyed. You could not think that way. There were no universities. We were plunged into the Dark Ages. And when new schools and universities opened up, it was the church that opened them up. And it was very clear then, from then on, to scientists, you do not tread on spiritual matters. That's our turf. You stick to physical things, and you won't get, you get more than your hands burnt, fingers burnt. And it's been so ironed out of our culture that scientists now, they take this on as gospel truth. They've cut, the Christians said, okay, human beings have consciousness, so does God, so do angels, and so does the devil. That's it. Mm-hmm. Everything else is unconscious, and it's our, supplies cupboard. And then when the scientists rejected the church, they said, okay, only human beings are conscious. We'll get rid of God, the devil, and angels. It's just us. And that's a religious prejudice. There's nothing scientific about that at all. And as we know, all the early astronomers, they learned astronomy to enhance their astrology, because they recognized that stars, planets are also conscious entities that have a big effect upon us. And we now, science has discovered a lot of the physical ways that this could be happening, with the electromagnetic fields joining up together between the sun and different planets. James Lovelock has put forward the Gaia theory, that the Earth itself is a living organism. Lots of people sort of commune spiritually with the moon, but the sun had been left out of the picture. And of course, my dad, following old dad's advice, go where nobody else is treading, I thought, hey, this is a great subject. And as I studied the science and cosmology of it, just everything fit the premise of stars being conscious entities. And it just fits so well. I'm just beat my head against the wall that scientists don't recognize. They will at some point, when it dawns on them, it'll be, oh my God. But at the moment, it's just so, scientists aren't allowed to go there. And maybe a few have, but they have mortgages and jobs and partners and children just like everybody else. And they don't want to lose all that by coming out with something that sounds so freaky. You're not allowed to speak it.
And I can't help but acknowledge the fact that there are so many ancient cultures, prehistorical cultures, that acknowledged the fact that there were relationships between different planets, different stars, maybe even different galaxies. And it just seems to be something that has been completely suppressed.
It has been. Ancient cultures, they weren't aware of other galaxies. All we saw was our own galaxy. Right? But the cosmologists are aware now that they detect electromagnetic fields joining one galaxy to another throughout the universe. And that's very recent, the last year or two. Slightly less recent, but still recent, they discovered that there are electromagnetic fields linking stars. So in the same way that you have these sort of fields linking neurons in our brain that aren't physically connected, but you have stars connected by electromagnetic fields. The sun's corona is connected to Earth. They detect lots of separate EM fields joining Earth to sun. And there's one big one they discovered 3 years ago, NASA discovered, called a magnetic portal, which is the diameter of the Earth. Mm. And there's a similar field coming out of the sun's corona. And every 8 minutes they join together, and tons of high energy particles pass back and forth between them. I mean, this is not random dumb ball of gas, accidental stuff going on. It's major. I mean, when we create electromagnetic fields, we go to great lengths to do it, and it's for a purpose. Like we send radio and TV transmissions through electromagnetic fields. They send all the data to our smartphones. They create Wi-Fi networks. That's all using our knowledge of electromagnetic energy and the fields that you create with it. And we see stars are connected to each other with these very active fields. And we think, oh, well, that must be just, dumb like farting or something. It's just mechanical, irrelevant behavior. And hey, obviously there's something going on there. They're connected. They're exchanging information. What about? I don't know. But it's definitely it's clearly a living universe that we inhabit. And, in the absence of recognizing that, they have to come up with these weird fixes like dark matter to explain why a galaxy doesn't behave like billiard balls on a billiard table, just responding to nothing but natural inputs and energies. So they have to say, oh well, there's this stuff called dark matter that holds the galaxy together and makes it behave like it should, because we've got no other explanation to tell us why it behaves like a living organism. So there must be something weird we can't discover, and it's
I mean, it's just fascinating. It was funny. I just so happened randomly I clicked on a documentary last night. I forgot what it was called. How the Universe Works, I think it was called. And of course, they have Michio Kaku on there, and he's talking about dark matter.
Right.
And he was saying pretty much what you just said. It's just funny how he explained it like it's there, but it's not there, and it moves through us, and we can't see it, but it's everywhere, and first thing I thought of was like chi. I'm like, are they trying to define chi energy or something?
Yeah, exactly. Well, chi doesn't exist. You can't talk about prana, chi, Holy Spirit, orgone energy. None of that's scientific. It's really sad in a sense that scientists, they poo-poo so much kind of far out, spiritual type of stuff, a lot of which deserves poo-pooing. I mean, there's a lot of junk out there.
Yeah.
But they just throw all of it out the window of consideration for no good reason. Just complying with the old church taboo, and yet they accept that 85% of the matter in the universe is completely undetectable. There's no evidence for it whatsoever, and yet it's become this fixture of scientific belief. And really, early theologians debating how many angels you could fit on the head of a pin were more on target, because if there are angels, they're beings of light, and light is infinitely compressible. It doesn't have any substance. It doesn't have any matter requirements to be in a space, because it's just a vibration. So you could, if you wanted to waste your time, argue how many angels could fit on the head of a pin. It makes more sense than dark matter anyway. It's still a bit silly.
Now, what interested you into studying about the sun and following this rabbit hole, for lack of a better term?
Well, when I turned on in '66, to the mover of the 60s, which was LSD. On one of my very first trips, I climbed to the top of Strawberry Canyon behind University of Berkeley, and I ended up staring into the sun for about, I think it was about 20 minutes. Maybe it was 10 and it seemed like 20 minutes, but quite a long time, eyes open. And it was a really powerful experience. And in that, I recognized that there was somebody there. There was somebody looking back, if you like. And you could dismiss that as, a psychedelic experience or something. And I never had that experience. I never did that again, because you're not supposed to look at the sun. And I've started again recently, and there's a word for it now. It's called sun gazing.
Yeah.
And if you're careful about how you do it, you can do it without damaging your eyes. And it's a powerful experience. But in that experience, I had that recognition, but there was no place to put it, nothing to do with it. I couldn't really do anything with it other than feel a little bit of a special connection. All the decades that followed, and when I'd look at sunsets and sunrises, they'd have that extra meaning for me. And if people talked about SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, I'd make some quip about, we're sending all this equipment out looking for somebody kind of like us, but meanwhile we're ignoring the biggest intelligence in our neighborhood. We totally ignore the sun. And people would give me a strange look, and I'd leave it at that. So it was really, I was looking for a topic for another book after Uncommon Sense, The State is Out of Date. And I had a few ideas. And in fact, I was working on one of those ideas, and it morphed into a book following on the Son of, Into the Son of God. I just got into topic drift when I was talking about evolution, and realized, hey, Greg, this is your book. This is what to write about. And I mean, there's only one chapter of the book is actually devoted to convincing you that the stars are living entities. And once you start to lay out the information, it's kind of a no-brainer. And the rest of the book is either looking at religions and how they came about, and then most of the book is about the implications. Well, if stars are conscious, what does this mean about light? What does it mean about, various aspects of our lives and consciousness itself? Because we tend to assume that many people assume that consciousness is somehow a product of all those neurons in the brain, and the brain wiring and all that creates consciousness. But the other way of looking at it is that that's the medium through which we receive consciousness and work with consciousness. That's our particular medium for it. But everybody agrees, scientists as well, that consciousness is the most mysterious part of our human existence, that it is not itself a physical entity. However it comes about, because, when we die, all those brains and neurons are still there, but the consciousness is gone someplace else, or disappeared, if that's how you believe. And we have always had, all humanity and has recognized other types of entities, ghosts, spirits, God, there's always been this perception of the other. And this perception, which is, again, a sort of hardwired intuition, which isn't always right, but when it crosses cultures and thousands of years, maybe it is. And many people have had contact with other spirits. When you recognize that, you say, well, if it can exist without being connected to anything physical, then yeah, sure, it could exist connected to things physical. If it can exist independent of them. So, perhaps trees and mountains and rivers and oceans also share in this all-pervasive prana or chi or energy of life. Obviously, it's going to be a very different interpretation from what our wired brains get from it. So that's one of to me, the more profound places I got to through recognizing stellar consciousness was universal consciousness, and then light, the nature of light. And that's what it was the most exciting chapter to write in the book. I called it in the light of intelligence, on the intelligence of light. And I give a lecture now called Seeing the Light Through Ancient Eyes, which draws back to two ancient prophets, Zoroaster and Akhenaten, who recognized light itself as the ultimate deity. And they recognized that the sun was like the local agent of that force, that fire was a representation of the light force. And when I started looking into that, I realized, hey, they were really right on target with quantum thinking about light, because they saw it as something beyond human understanding, beyond our comprehension. They didn't have statues to it. They didn't have names to it. It was beyond all of that, but it was this ultimate divinity. And when you look at quantum understanding of light now, you see that it is absolutely everywhere, all pervasive. It's the electromagnetic force, which is expressed through light, is what gives atoms the appearance of being solid. We know they're 99% plus empty space, but it's the electromagnetic force that makes them feel like cotton wool or iron or water or whatever they are. And so at that finest level of the atom, it's present. And then if you got into deep space and all you can see is the light of a distant galaxy, that light is the electromagnetic force, and it's permeating every single, iota of space that you're in, because wherever you are, you're going to see that galaxy. So it is indeed all present everywhere. It's the ultimate transmitter of information. It's not just what we get through our eyes, which is pretty incredible. That little tiny hole in the middle of our eyes informs us about the world around us. We also use light, different wavelengths of it, to do MRI scans and X-rays. And as I said earlier, send everything we send to our smartphones. That's light carrying information. It's really good at it, And we know also that our cells communicate with photons. The neurons in our brain express photons. We find plants and bacteria colonies communicating to each other with light. So I think Zoroaster and Akhenaten were right on the money, saying this is the ultimate divinity from which everything else flows.
Absolutely. Isn't there a recent technology that's being investigated where they are trying to, send electricity through homes using light? I think I read something recently about that, where they're going to use light beams or something to send electricity. So
that was probably they're probably finally catching up with Nikola Tesla, because he used to power his laboratory with lights that he carried around in his hands that weren't attached to anything.
Yeah.
And that's, but because they couldn't figure out a way to charge for it, it was scotched.
Absolutely. Now, I have now this is a personal curiosity because of my spiritual experiences. When I had my vision quest back in '92, and I had the whole out-of-body experience and going back to the source of all things, and it was a conscious entity. But I can't help but compare what it felt like as moving into the sun. Like I was within the sun and joined the consciousness of the sun, and seeing the spirits incarnate, leaving like little drops of light coming to Earth and returning back to the sun.
Right.
Now, that was what I saw.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic, because we are, the actual energy of life is absolutely recycled sunlight.
Yeah.
That it's solar, it's sunlight that is stored in plants as energy, and then the animals that eat those plants, and the animals that eat those animals, the actual energy of life is sunlight. That's what our consciousness is. It's sunlight experiencing human consciousness, or us experiencing, us transmitting solar consciousness. We're made of stardust. 93% of the matter in our bodies outside of the hydrogen was manufactured in a star. So we're children of the stars. And you think about the light hitting Earth and coming back. That's always intrigued me, because, when you're out in the dark and you shine a torch at something, what you're getting is the light coming back from a tree in the middle of the woods, telling you about the tree, sending in, bringing back information about the tree. And even though you've got a flashlight going out, that doesn't stop the flow from coming back. So when you think of all the sunlight that is hitting Earth and illuminating our beautiful planet, what bounces back? That's like a flashlight, but it's this sort of 360-degree global flashlight coming out from the sun. But what is going back to the sun is a picture of Earth.
Yeah.
All those photons that, reflect back into space. We can see it from the moon with the naked eye. You can see the green planet and the blue planet. So what's going back to the sun is quite a detailed picture, because, you look at the size of the Hubble telescope. Well, we're talking millions of times a bigger lens, if indeed the sun is equipped to read the information in that light that's coming back. And it could be there's very interesting invisible layers of the sun, beyond the photosphere, which is what we see when it sinks below the horizon at night. You've got sort of this very, very curious chromosphere, which is a few thousand miles deep, is the first surface. It's covered in electromagnetic fields, these things called spicules, which are red rods which fly up and down many times the speed of sound. Nobody really knows what's going on, because it's an invisible, energetic. You see it during a total eclipse of the sun, and people measure stuff there. But if the sun is somehow equipped to see, then it's going to get a really detailed picture of what's going on Earth. I mean, I just find that amuses me as people always do bad deeds in the dark of night.
Right, exactly. And to take it a little bit out of our solar system, maybe expanding a little bit, and I can't help but I guess ask you to speculate, if not hypothesize, if you already have. The idea that, and I guess I'm moving into like maybe Hindu mythology here, the idea of, the Big Bang. Let's say the Big Bang happened, then maybe, what is it, a billion years later, the stars begin to form, and I guess it was gravity that brought the stars to come together to create a star. And if all of these stars are linking with each other, is that kind of is it fair to say that you speculate, or you hypothesize that all the stars have a bit of consciousness that stems from, I guess, the source of all being?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I see stars as probably the first intelligent life form in the universe. I mean, if the universe were 100 years old, it was in the first 2 or 3 years, relatively speaking, that stars began to form. And we now know that the electromagnetic force, good old electromagnetic force again, is very key to star formation. So when you have a cloud of interstellar dust, it's the electromagnetic force that is shaping this, using gravity, using whatever tools are to hand, into this multi-layered device called a star, or multi-layered organism, because there are many layers to a star. Some of them rotate around each other at different speeds. They're all performing different functions, but the main function we're aware of is light production. So you have electromagnetic force, which is manifested by light, shaping matter into an object, shaping clouds of interstellar dust into an object, And what does that physical object do? It creates light. So it's kind of a birth rebirth thing going on there. And I do believe, I do work with those ancient prophets actually, and I do see divine force, intelligence of the universe, and thus everything that is producing light is an agent of that intelligence, really. And you look at how we forget the science for a minute, but you look at how we use light in our language, and when we see the light, it's often because somebody's been shedding light on the subject, and we're getting intelligence. When we're inspired, we're all lit up, we're all fired up. The total state of awareness and knowledge is enlightenment. When we're thrilled, we're delighted. When we die, the lights go out. When you're on the right track in life, you're following a guiding light. When you stray from that path or you ignore it, you're hiding your light under a bushel. And the way we use light in our language tells us what we kind of intuitively know about it, that it is intelligent, it's divine, it is love. And when you go out on after a bunch of scrungy winter weather and the sun's out on a lovely spring day, wow, your spirits are lifted, you feel great, and it's the light that's making you feel that way. You don't get that from a hot room with the lights turned up. And this is how we respond, how we talk about light. It tells us a lot about it, but unfortunately, most people will spend more time, choosing sunglasses in their life than they will thinking about the nature of the sun.
Yeah, sad but true.
That's what I'm trying to correct with my book.
And one of the things I just want to point out, because we have to go on commercial break in just a minute, is the fact that the sun does offer human beings nutrients, vitamins, as well as allowing for photosynthesis with the trees to produce oxygen.
Okay, we'll do that after the break.
Yes, absolutely. And I would love to get into a little bit more about the sun gazing, because I hear of people that are literally nourishing themselves strictly with sunlight, and it's a very fascinating concept. We're going to take a station identification. We'll be back in just a moment with Gregory Sams.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show. We are having a great conversation today with Gregory Sams. And before we went on the break, we were just getting into talking about how the sun literally does provide not only human beings with nutrients, but is a very important aspect of creating life on this particular planet, whether it be the oceans and the trees. And also, there are those now that are doing something that is called sun gazing. And I was wondering if you could explain to us a little bit about what sun gazing is.
Okay, sun gazing is staring into the sun. And you can easily do that just before it sets at night or just before it rises. Just after it rises, and you can also, you can develop on that and just push the hours and the time that you can do it, because if you're not squinting, then it's going to be okay. And I also sun gaze sometimes through thin cloud, or there are other sometimes reflections in water is easy to do it. Now, I know as we know, the entire vegetable world is created by photosynthesis, which means made by light, and that's where water and air, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and water and air are combined by sunlight into all the products of the ocean and the vegetable world, which is pretty incredible. I mean, we can make soda water, and we get clouds and foam out of water and air, but you add that sunlight factor, and you get the whole natural world. Now, we're aware of getting vitamin D, which we really need for bone manufacture, and a lot of our aspects of health come from vitamin D, of which this 20 minutes of sunshine gives you way more than any amount of pills or oils can give you. It's the way to take it. And the sun gazing, the thing you're alluding to, which I'm not really getting to, but is people who say that they've given up all food and they are somehow photosynthesizing or creating the food direct from the sunlight. And you're talking to a guy who loves his food. I just really like food.
Yeah, me too.
What a gift of the air, water, and the sun, and the earth, to bring these wonderful things to us. And the thought of giving that up, I mean, it horrifies me. But of course, if we were in some place and the bad side of and the bad Armageddon happened and there was no food and everybody's running in the streets, and being able to synthesize sunlight could be useful, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. How funny.
But I don't know. I mean, I believe some of the people who say they haven't eaten for 20 years, but I'm not interested enough to really check whether doctors have been there and this, that, and the other. And maybe they can. There's lots of amazing, incredible things that happen in this world, but it's not part of my relationship with the sun. I get spiritual nourishment. I get, nourishment from sun gazing, but I'm not looking to it as my food source.
Right. It's kind of like a supplement.
Yeah. Okay. Spiritual supplement.
Absolutely. And well, thank you for explaining a little bit on that. I find that I myself, if I don't have moments in the sun for very long, I can feel it. I mean, you feel tired, you feel fatigued. It just, it lowers your mood and whatnot. So I can understand the need for not only time in the sun, but sun gazing as well. I wanted to ask you, Greg, you talked about, to go back to the galaxy a little bit, you've compared the Milky Way galaxy to a human brain. What do you mean by that?
Well, for a start, we've got about as many neurons in our brain as there are stars in the Milky Way. And our neurons are connected. Each neuron is connected to quite a few other neurons through synapses, but it's not an actual hard connection. The synapse goes to the other neuron and then stops short. So there's a gap in between them, and they communicate across that gap with chemicals and with electromagnetic signals. It's a real mystery, though. We don't quite know how all of these, neurons conspire to create thought and action, let alone hold memories and stuff like that. How do you hold a memory of an event in a physical location? But that's what's going on. And as I said earlier, consciousness is the greatest mystery of our existence, but it somehow connects to the brain. And if we look at a galaxy, you've got the same amount of stars as we've got neurons, give or take a few billion. And they're all connected. We now know they are connected to each other by electromagnetic fields. So they're exchanging information. And I don't think it's that, great a leap of imagination to look at the galaxy itself as a single entity. When you look at some of the Hubble deep space photos, you see these galaxies dotted. Wherever you go, there are just a whole vision field full of galaxies. And galaxies, like stars, live in communities. They're called clusters. And so they're not just evenly spread any more than stars are. They're in communities of a few hundred or a few thousand. And stars, you get 5-10 million in a cluster. And they're all connected. So that was my real, how I connect the human mind to a galaxy, because the structure is not that dissimilar. And in fact, in my book, Son of God, the subtitle is Discover the Self-Organizing Intelligence, Consciousness that underlies everything. But my original subtitle, it was going to be Son of God. It may be everything to us, but it's just a bright spark in the mind of the cosmos. And that's really how I see our sun. It's one neuron in the mind of the cosmos, if you like, but it's much, much more complex and advanced than obviously we are, or than planets are.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at comparative images as well, you can see exactly what you're explaining.
Yeah, they look very similar. I've seen brain pictures and galaxy photo pictures, and they're very similar structure.
One of the things that I like about this conversation and about the idea of not only trying to understand all of this, but to bring that into our consciousness, to understand that perhaps there is an interplay, an interrelationship between the stars and whatnot, is it really does, for me, I would like to say that perhaps it helps me to transcend out of my ego, out of myself. It gives us a kind of a perception of feeling more connected with everything and everyone.
It does. It's interesting because even from a perspective point of view, we recognize just how tiny we are. We're this newcomer mammal on this tiny fleck of dust circling one star among hundreds of billions of stars, and we're so full of self-importance. But on the other hand, we're beings of light. We're recycling light as the energy of life. We're doing fantastic things with it. We're enjoying the fruits of the earth and beautiful days and the wind in the trees. So, and it's just a fantastic thing to be such a active part of this universe, however tiny that part might be, and who knows, maybe the bacteria in our intestines feel the same way as getting on with digesting our food.
Perhaps, well, as they say, as above, so below, Yeah. It all transcends into one another, I would think. Speaking of things that transcend one another, what do you think of this multiverse concept? Are there identical copies of us having a different conversation in another universe right now?
I think that I put that at an order of 10 times as much insane thinking as I do counting angels on the head of a pin, to tell you the truth. That somewhere else you and I are having a different conversation on a different radio station to explain this one. And again, it's trying to, it's the Goldilocks effect, in this universe, is how on earth could this universe exist when you look at all the thousands of parameters that had to be just this exact value in just this sequence, not just for life to arise, but for humanity, for the universe, for stars to hold together and things like that. It's so dependent upon, the conditions being Goldilocks perfect. That they say, well, the only way we can really explain this is if there's an infinite number of galaxies, a near infinite number. They put a number on it, and if we had that many galaxies, universes, one of them might just have turned out this way. And the number they put on it is interesting. It's 10 to the power of 500. Now, they put a number, maybe a more realistic number, on how many atoms there are in this universe. That's 10 to the power of 80. 10 to the power of 81 is 10 times that many. 10 to the power of 83 is 1,000 times as many atoms are there are in this universe. Now, if you calculate out to 10 to the power of 500, you can see that's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's how many they thought they would be needed for one to turn out this way. And because they're trying to deny any intelligence in this universe unless you're a human being, or perhaps something just like us but with 3 legs and 1 eye that comes from a different solar system somewhere. and sort of ignoring the whole idea of the universe itself being intelligence, of all that electromagnetic energy, which is, our consciousness is some sort of an electromagnetic field. The universe is filled with in electromagnetic fields interacting with each other and saying, no, that's all just stuff and nonsense. How is it that this universe looks like it's been intelligently constructed? Well, that harks back to chaos theory. From the bottom up, you get intelligent construction. So if there was a Big Bang, maybe right after the Big Bang, it was kind of a dumb universe, but it slowly got its act together, and turned to this incredible construct we have today.
And
so we don't need. I mean, there might be other universes. It's a cute concept, but we don't need them in order for this one to exist.
right, exactly. And for me, if I were to entertain that concept, I would have to. Well, I guess I would look at it as a parallel timeline, perhaps. We, instead of having the conversation go one way, it went another way on that particular timeline. Maybe a parallel dimensional reaction of something that was started at one moment. And I can't help but wonder how does your philosophy take in the idea of different dimensions? Is there consciousness in other dimensions as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of friends who've taken ayahuasca, and I've occasionally met other dimension consciousnesses. What we mean by another dimension, I'm not even sure. Non-physical dimensions, for certain. I mean, light exists in a non-physical dimension, and these other consciousnesses are manifestations of light in one way or another. They're light beings or energy beings. I don't see, as I said, a need for other universes. But there might be ones out there in other overlapping dimensions. Who knows? But we don't really need that to understand or to live successfully within this one, which is kind of the object of being alive. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly. I wouldn't deny evidence, not just my own, but going back through thousands of years of people have professed to meet spirit entities of all different sorts in different situations, and they are all dismissed as deluded hoaxers, some sort of a misunderstanding by science or by people who haven't experienced this. I have seen a psychic surgeon do stuff so weird I won't even
Right.
try to describe it to you, and been really intimately there when he was doing it and doing it on me, and it's just, I can't explain it, but he does. He says spirits take him over and he goes into trance, and this was a mild-mannered Brazilian taxi driver 30 years ago, Lerival de Freitas, and but when he went into trance, he was just this enlivened guy. He would drink whiskey and not get drunk, and he'd cut people up and pull things out. And my God, it just sounds completely crazy. So I give credit to a lot of the experiences people have had, and there are entities in other dimensions who interface with us, and we've lost the knack, or maybe only a few people ever have the knack for doing that. Maybe you need to take certain, plant medicine aids to do it, but it's a universal phenomena in cultures for thousands of years, so we can't really just dismiss that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And with that, what will be the benefit to humanity if we can get past this the suppression of understanding of the sun? What will be the benefit on an individual level and maybe on a societal level?
Well, on the sort of mechanical level, we'd have, I think, a great improvement in physical and mental health. We're so taught to be frightened of the sun, which is criminal thinking. But people are so concerned about covering themselves in protection and wearing special glasses, and they're so worried about what might happen if a coronal mass ejection damages our power grid. And it's this fear thing, and this is the source of the light of life. It's the most important character in our movie. I mean, the sun is the star in the movie of life, and we don't acknowledge that. So there's huge benefits in terms of just physical, social, mental health involved in doing that. It also gives us a road into a much deeper spirituality for the human race, because we've been sidetracked for centuries into most of us in the Western culture, into three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, founded by a guy. I mean, the prophet, the original prophet for all of them, Abraham, is a guy who was about to stick a knife into his son's chest because he was following the instructions of the Lord. Now, that we call somebody like that a psychopath today, I think might be the term. And the three major religions on the planet emanate from this, and they all believe in prophets who are telling us that God created the entire universe for the benefit of humankind only.
Right.
And that God created light as like he created, Eve out of Adam's rib, and it's really, there's a lot of great stuff in all those religions, a lot of great human knowledge and social mores and advice and wisdom, but they all really cover up the source of that, which is divine light, which isn't something that was created by God after he did other things. So recognizing stellar consciousness really opens up us to a more realistic spiritual beliefs. Unfortunately, spiritual beliefs, whenever they get standardized and organized, they do tend to get a little bit distance from the original inspiration. But Zoroastrianism, which is still a religion, they're called Parsis today usually, was a religion of light. And was the religion of the Persian Empire for quite a while. And the Persian Empire was an unusual thing. A lot of people were really happy when the Persians took over, because they believed in freedom of religion, freedom of people. And Cyrus the Great in 539 BC created the first human Bill of Rights, and in it, in the entire Persian Empire, which was larger than the subsequent Roman Empire, he banned slavery. He abolished any guilt by association with things that your relatives did. He guaranteed freedom of religion. He sort of insisted that when soldiers came in, conquered a city, they were to respect the private property of individuals. There was no looting, burning, raping going on. This was a religion based on light, and it was a very inspired. They saw the light in terms of good behavior, how things should be. That's what you get from light. And at the moment, we go into buildings, close your eyes, and look down.
Yeah.
Communicate with God, shutting him out altogether. And read about it in books instead of, ingesting it directly from the source, which is how we should do. We can use guidance on that and find out what other people have discovered, but it's always a personal, religion should be a personal experience, not something you get strictly out of a book.
Right, yeah. It should be experiential versus intellectual.
Yeah, it's both, but we should test the intellect against our experience and see that it makes sense, and not just have blind faith in things because some prophet said so, thousands of years ago. But we should also, yeah, that makes sense. We should be good because it's good to be good, not because somebody tells us we're going to go to hell if we're not.
Right. And you can't help but think about what the psychology of that does to somebody. When as someone who was a former Catholic growing up, I know what that did to me through my teens. It was like, oh, I'm going to hell. But once you get past that, it's very freeing. However, I can't imagine, just the millions, maybe billions of people that live in that fear of going to hell, for lack of a better term, literally. But anyway, I can't believe we're almost out of time already.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gregory. I just wanted to ask you, what's next for you? Are you going to be doing any lectures? The book I know is coming out in a few months.
Well, let me just give you my website, which is www.gregorysams.com. And the big thing really is the upgrade to my first book, coming out soon, The Power of Freedom, because I think the real world really needs that. It really ties in with Occupy movements, and people really need to realize, as governments are toppling, or imploding sometimes for their own uselessness around us, that the route to go is not to put another government with different ideas, different tweaks and knobs to it. We really can do it ourselves, without having that central coercive power, protecting us with an umbrella of nuclear weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really exciting, and I'm giving lectures around the UK. I haven't got any scheduled in America at the moment, and that's what I'm doing.
Great.
It's great fun.
Well, thank you again so much for joining us, and remember, everyone, that's GregorySams.com, correct?
That's it.
All right. Wonderful.
I've enjoyed it a lot.
Great. Thank you. We did too. I just want to let everybody know that next Monday we've got Gary Wade joining us, and he's going to be talking about, again, alternative healing and using electricity. And don't forget, this Thursday is our show Tribe TV with fellow Revolution Radio Roxy Lopez joining me on the GIC.org. That's Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.